joining. I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedules to join in for this. I really hope that you leave today with some new information you didn't know before and are excited to try this for yourself. All right, let's get right into it. Right, so a little bit about me. I started lashing full-time in 2016. I was in high school, and the day I got my certificate, I have not done another thing since. So I really love lashes and our whole community a lot. I joined Sugar Lash Pro as an educator back in 2019. And then I recently, in 2022, moved to a new city and rebuilt my clientele in Calgary. So that's where I am now. And I specialize in lash design and styling. So if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is Lash Oasis. I'm always open to questions. If you guys try a half set and are having issues or you just want some feedback, I'm always open to that. Don't hesitate to reach out ever. So what is a half set and why should you offer it? So the definition of a half set is half or 40 to 60% of the natural lashes are extended. So why offer this? Well, 60% of my half set bookings are lash virgins. So this means these people have seen lash extensions and have never been interested in trying it or booking in until they saw that the half set was an option. The other 40% are lash customers who have previously quit getting extensions and didn't want to get them again until they saw that the half set was something that they could book in for. So by providing this service, you're going to get a new customer base, plus it helps you to retain clientele that are thinking about leaving. So let's talk about who is ideal for a half set and who is not ideal for a half set. So it's ideal for clients who prefer a more natural, wispy set. Not really ideal for people who want a really thick, long, dramatic, fluffy lash. And for positioning, it's ideal for someone who has regular or narrow eye positions, not super ideal for people with wide. And then you want them to have a neutral or upturned plane instead of downturned. Now, with this being said, that doesn't mean you can't do a half set on someone who has a wider positioning or a downturned plane. You can definitely still do it on them and make it work. It's just a little bit more ideal for the person that has that neutral or upturned plane. The main thing that's going to cause issues is if someone wants a huge, thick, long set, it's going to be really difficult to do that in the half set. So that's someone who's going to be a lot better for just a full set. So in my opinion, the most challenging aspect of a half set is the transition. So we're aiming for a polished and finished final look. We don't want it to look like someone has extensions on their outer corner and then a drop off and absolutely nothing in the inner corner. We want it to look like a really finished result, and that's the hardest part of doing a half set is the transition area. So we want the transition to occur right above the pupil. That is where we're doing most of the work to transition from the extensions down to the natural lashes. So one of the biggest mistakes is you never want to divide the eye in half because the true mid-eye is located closer to the inner corner than the center of the eye. So if you guys can see here, if you are going to map a half set, and let's say you just do a line straight through, so 50% on the outer corner, 50% on the inner corner, and you're only lashing this area and then absolutely nothing in here, the client is going to look crazy. It's not going to look good. So when your client has their eyes closed, the pupil actually is a little bit closer to the inner corner than you would suspect from the above view. So with a half set, we're not just doing extensions and then nothing. We're doing a larger surface area, but we're not applying 100% coverage to that entire area. Hope that makes sense to everybody. So there's a couple different methods you can use to transition. So the first one I want to talk about is called scattering. So this is done by applying a large variety of lengths throughout the entire set. So let's just say your longest length is going to be a 12 millimeter, and that is in the emphasis area. If you just apply 12s, 11s, and then 10s, as you would in a very regular set, it's going to be quite tricky to have it transition to the natural lashes. So what I recommend, scattering is where you're applying, let's say 12s in the longest length area. And then you're going to also apply a couple of 11s, a couple of 10s, a couple of 9s. You're going to mix lots of different length variations throughout the entire set. And that's going to help you get a really natural, seamless effect. The second method is called ombre. So this is where we're decreasing the D of fans as you go into the inner and outer corner. So let's say your emphasis area is 6D fans. Instead of applying 6D fans all throughout the whole set, you're going to want to do 6D and then maybe go down to 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 in the inner corner. And then the last one is curl mixing. So transitioning from one curl on the outer corner to a different one in the inner corner. Most people's natural lashes are quite straight. So if you want to do a CC curl, it's going to be a little bit easier to transition to those straighter natural lashes by applying a couple of C curl in that transition area right above the pupil. And the thing with these methods, you don't have to just pick one. You can mix and match these. So you could do scattering as well as ombre, where you're scattering lots of lengths throughout, and then you're also doing a decrease in fan D as you go in and out of the outer corner. So you don't have to just pick one method. You can mix and match these. You can do all three of them. It's totally up to you. These sets are so customizable. There's lots of different ways that you can get a half set done. So when I have someone book in for a half set, the first thing I'm doing during the consultation is I'm educating the client on what a half set actually is. I want to ensure that they're going to be getting the look that they're after. It's important to show photos, and you want to manage their expectations. I've had it quite a few times where people will see the half set option on my website. They'll book in for that because it's cheaper than a full set. And then they come in and they don't really realize what it is. And through talking, we figure out that they're actually better suited to a full set. So that's super important to do with every half set client because not that many people offer half sets. So clients aren't really sure what it is all the time. So once I've done that with my client, the second thing I'm going to do is called open eye mapping. I like to use the dot method. So basically we're going to be placing one dot above the pupil, 2 dots on either side of the iris, and 1 dot where the sclera and the skin meet. So this is going to help me to map out my client with their eyes shut so that I know where the location of their pupil is, so that I know where I'm transitioning. It's a lot harder if you don't have any reference point and you're kind of just guessing where that pupil is located once their eyes shut. The third thing I like to do before I begin is do a length and curl check with the client's eyes open. So usually I do one above the pupil and then one for the location of the emphasis length. So where I'm putting that longest length. Now I like to do this because since we're going from extensions to natural lash in the inner corner, you don't want it to be too long because that's just going to make the transition way harder. So I'll take, let's say I'm going to do a C curl and a 12 millimeter is going to be my longest length. I'm going to grab that extension. With the client's eye open, I'm going to hold it up to where I'm going to be placing it and just see how it looks. Does it look too long? Does it look like that's going to be too dramatic for what they're looking for? Am I going to be able to transition that? You might put a 14 up and be like, whoa, that's I don't know what I'm thinking. That's crazy long. It just helps you to be a little bit more sure when you're going into actually lashing. So this is a better example of the coverage dispersion we're doing. Like I said, we're not lashing 50% of the eye and not doing the other 50%. So this is kind of like a waterfall. Essentially, wherever your longest length is going to be, that's where you're going to put 90% of the coverage. And then as you go out, you're going to be doing less coverage, less lashes, but we're spreading it across more of the eye. So here you guys can see me doing the dot method. It's kind of from the angle, so it doesn't look like it's above for people, but it is, trust me. And now I'm doing my length check, making sure I'm happy with how long I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna go right into mapping. So the first thing, where that pupil is, I like to do a dotted line. This just helps me when I'm actually doing the mapping. It doesn't get me confused, and it just reminds me like that's where the pupil is. That's where I'm transitioning, because that's probably the, like I said, the most important part of a half set is making sure that transition is seamless, it looks complete, and it doesn't look off. So this client, she used to get extensions way back in the day. She'd get like a very natural classic set. And this is her first time getting extensions in probably 3 years. So she wanted something that was natural, light, wispy, and she wanted not an extreme cat eye, but like an outer eye lift. So as you can see, I'm putting the 12 millimeter. I'm not putting them right to the ends. I'm going to go drop down to a 10 and a 9. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Oh. So yeah, by dropping down, I'm gonna make sure that that outer corner is not gonna be drooping, because we do not want drooping on the outer corner. So I would call this more of a kind of a kitten shape. When I'm doing half sets, I rarely put, even if they're asking for a cat eye, I'm very conscious of trying to not droop their outer corner. So I almost always opt for a kitten shape and just taper down right at the very end. So I'm going in with spikes in each section. I want this to be very wispy, very natural. So we go through with our spikes, and then once I'm happy with the spikes, I know I only put, the map isn't fully complete just because I didn't have enough space to write all the different lengths. But in that section where it says 12 and then 10, I'm also going to be placing some 9s. I might be also placing a couple 8s in there. I'm really mixing a ton of different lengths throughout the whole set. And that's the scattering method. As I go into the inner corner, I'm also doing a little bit of an ombre. So I'm decreasing the D of the fans as I get closer to the inner corner. And that's also going to help. And I like to just pinch the tip of each of my spikes for the top layer because I really want them to stay together, the tips. And then for the bottom layer, I'm going to be going in with just closed fans, so I won't have to pinch any of those tips. So this is the section we're wanting to do the highest coverage. Go to the next one. Sorry. So like I said, I just kind of put that little tiny bracket at the top here. And this is where I'm focusing, right around here is where I'm going to be focusing the most amount of coverage. So I'm lashing the most lashes in that section. And then as I'm going out from there, I'm doing less and less. I also like to keep the last like maybe 5 natural lashes in the outer corner unlashed for half sets. Because I feel like that also helps with less drooping. And it allows the outside to not look too heavy. So yeah, now we're just going in with all of those shorter lengths, filling it in slowly. And I kind of like to work from that emphasis area outwards. I find it keeps me more organized and I can kind of see the set coming together. So as you can see, this is like way more than 50% of the eye, but it's not 100% coverage. And that's really that's the key to a half set. As you can see, I sprinkle quite a few into the inner corner, and that's just helping to make it look really, really polished at the end. So at the end, I'm just brushing through, checking to make sure I'm happy. I'll just pause right here. So when I'm done the half set, what I like to do is I take both my fingers and I lift up the inner corners so I can check to make sure that they're even. Because sometimes when you're lashing from above, there might be a couple like inner corners that are underneath the eye patch that you don't notice. I really want to make sure that the transition area is even, that I have the same amount of unlashed hairs on the inner corner on each eye. And sometimes there's like, if you put an extension on the top layer on one side on the inner corner and then the other you do on the bottom layer, it can look a little bit uneven. So I'm just double checking to make sure that I'm happy with how that is looking. And if I need to make any other additional, tweaks to it, if I need to take one off and, put it on the bottom layer to make it match, then this is when I do that to make sure. So yeah, brushing them through, doing a little lift check, just kind of spreading them out. And then we're all done. So this set from beginning to end took me 1 hour. So here we have it after. So she's left with a really light, wispy, natural outer eye enhancement. It elongates her eyes, it lifts them at the end. It's super natural, but it's still impactful, where she looks done up, but it's not like extreme. And that's like the best for a half set. Like that's the ideal client, someone who wants something natural and understated. So for this set, I used C curl and I did 6 to 12 millimeters. And I used a 0.07 closed fan plus spikes. So I generally like to use a volume diameter when I'm doing a half set, just because we're not doing 100% coverage, and I find doing closed fans instead of, let's say, a classic is going to add enough density where you're not going to be seeing any of those unlashed hairs throughout that section to the naked eye. Obviously, I can see when I'm lashing, and then the transitions I used, obviously I did the waterfall where as we go out, we decrease coverage. And then as we go into the inner corner, that ombre where we're doing less on each fan, and then also scattering a lot of different length throughout the whole set. I think we got a question.
Yeah, Irene had a question. Do you prefer closed fans for half sets, or do you sometimes use open fans?
I do both. That's the thing with half sets that's so cool is you can essentially take any style of lashing. So let's say like a wet set. You can do it a half wet set. You could do a eyeliner look with all open fans. It's really kind of just dependent on what the client's after. I find that most people want something that's wispy. So I would say like probably 80% of the time, I'm doing majority closed fans. Now you have that odd person who wants maybe a little bit more of a dramatic, like winged out effect. And then I'll usually for that do a, volume, like true volume, open fans on the outer corner. And then as I go in, I'll start to add in some more closed ones just to help with that transition. But yeah, like the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you kind of feel like, which is the beauty of it, right? So, like I was saying, some of the product recommendations. So, due to their versatility, the world is your oyster. You can do a classic set, you can do a full volume half set. The only stipulation with half sets is you can't really get into the 14, 15 millimeter range. When you start getting above like a 14, going from natural lashes to nothing it's trickier to do, and you have to plan a little bit more. So it's hard to complete that sort of set in an hour, and then it kind of defeats the purpose of offering half sets. So I generally like to pick a C or CC curl. Also sometimes B, depending on the person's natural lashes, but I just find using a curl that's slightly more similar to their natural lashes is easier. If you're trying to transition from a D curl to no lashes, it's going to be a lot more noticeable and a little bit of an eyesore. You're going to be seeing, like, since they curl so much, the inner corner, when you just have like 3 or 4 of those really curly extensions, they tend to stand out a lot. So I always opt for a C or CC curl, or I use a transition, right? If they really want D curl, I'll mix in some CC and then also some C curl. Diameters, I generally just gravitate towards a 0.10, 0.07, and a 0.05. Those are my go-tos on most of my clients. Every once in a while, if someone has like really fine natural lashes, I might go to a 0.03. And then for adhesive, I'm quite fast with my lashing, so I prefer the Bond Noir because it has a 0.05 second dry time. So for me, since I'm working mostly on the outer corners and I'm working fast, you're in the same area a lot. So if you're using a slow drying adhesive, I find I just get more stickies that way. When you're doing a full set, you might go from inner corner to outer corner to outer corner to mid-eye. But with the half set, you're kind of just staying on the outside majority of the time. And I mean, I'm trying to do my half sets as well as I can do them in the shortest amount of time possible. People who are getting a half set generally are gravitating towards it because it takes less time. They don't want to be laying down for 2 to 3 hours. That's one of the reasons they stop getting lashes, because of the maintenance, the time it takes to lay on a bed. Not everybody enjoys getting their lashes done. So the half set being a shorter service where you can go from nothing to a finished look is appealing to those types of clients. So I'm trying to get them the look that they want with quality application in the shortest amount of time possible. And I usually like to go for the runway collection. That's just my preference. I like those lashes. But like I said, you can do a classic. You can do kind of with anything other than like really long extensions. That's kind of my own, and really thick. Those are my stipulations. If you are going to use a 0.03, you want to make sure that you're doing really light, like closed fans. If you're going to do a 0.03 and be doing really big bouquet fans, it just wouldn't work. Like, it would be not ideal. They should just get a full set at that point.
So is it always that the lashes are focused to the outer corner, or is there half sets where you're kind of spreading them across the entire eye?
So you can absolutely do a half set where it's across the entire eye. I generally find most people who are booking in for my sort of half set that I usually am, posting on my Instagram, most of those people are cluster wearers, or they're getting like a half lash. So they're going to Sephora or Walmart, they're buying a full strip, they're cutting it in half, sticking it on the outer corner, and putting some mascara on the inners. That's what most of them are doing. So I find my most requested is the outer eye half set. But with that being said, if someone wants a full eye half set, you don't have to worry about the transition. It's essentially the same as doing a full set, except you're just doing less coverage. So it's the full eye half set is absolutely something you can do. It's a little bit easier than doing the half one, but that's what I find most people are requesting from me. So you might get the odd person who wants it across the whole eye, but it just depends on like what they're doing on a daily basis. I get a lot of cluster girls who do like 3 clusters in the outer corner, and then they're basically like, I'm sick of doing that. I want you to recreate that with the half set. Yeah. Hope that answers it.
Thanks.
Okay.
We do have another question, Leah.
Okay.
With a half set comes less lash extensions, which means sets won't last as long. Does this mean 1 week refills because 2 would seem too long, being that they don't have a full set? And if that's so, how is coming in more beneficial for clients?
We're gonna touch on, that's my next slide. So let's get into it. So to ensure good retention, I recommend focusing the majority of your extensions on the catagen stage lashes. So as we know, baby hairs will grow out a substantial amount. That's where most of your growth is coming from when people are coming in for fills. So when you have someone coming in from a full set fill, you're spending the first 15 minutes removing all of these extensions to replace them all. But if we're not placing any extensions on any baby hairs, the growth is very minimal. Like most people who come back for a half set with me don't have that many to take off. Like I might have a couple here and there that I just pop off, but that's not really an issue with the half set. So baby hairs grow at a substantial amount. The adult hairs are next to fall out. So the teenagers is where we have the most minimal growth and they last the longest. So while I'm doing a half set, I'm making note of what hairs I'm placing on. So obviously everybody knows what a anagen stage lash looks like. It's small, it's very fine. They're significantly shorter than the rest of the lashes. And then there's the catagen, which are almost adult hairs. They're pretty long, they're sturdy, they're in there. And then the telogen is probably the hardest one to distinguish because they're the longest hairs, but they're not that much longer. It's a very minimal amount, like maybe a couple millimeters longer. But a good way to tell if a hair is in the telogen phase, if you isolate a telogen lash and you look to the base right by the eyelid, the hair follicle, when a hair is going from catagen to telogen phase, will not have any pigment at the base. So it's going to turn white before it falls out. And that's a good way to tell. And then also, if you're moving that hair around and it's kind of going in one direction and staying there, it's a lot more movable. That hair is going to fall out in the next 3 to 4 days. So I just don't even place on any of them. I only try and focus on the catagen. So that 4, 5, 6 range is where you're going to get the best retention. So this is one of my clients at 2.5 weeks. She usually comes in at 4 weeks for her half set refill. So as you can see, these look awesome still. She was going on a vacation and wanted just a quick cleanup. As you can see, there's a couple extensions that are growing out that I'm going to pop off. But like this fill probably took me 20 minutes to just top her up, clean up a couple things, and she was on her way. So the retention is actually a lot better than you think if you are placing on those catagen lashes. Also, since it's a very natural, we're placing lots of different lengths, we're transitioning properly to the inner corner. As they're falling out, they don't look bad. Like they just look more and more natural. So yeah, like I do fills, I do offer fills on half sets, but I also have clients who come once every 6 weeks. They'll get a half set, they'll wait 6 weeks till majority of them are gone, and then I'll give them another full half set. And then I have the clients who, you know, are a little bit more particular and want them to look relatively the same all the time. And they'll come in about 2.5, 3 weeks. And these fills, since there's not much grow out, they have really good retention. It's taking me like 30 minutes to do a fill at around 3 weeks. So clients love that. I hope that answers that question. So the best part about half sets is they're customizable. There's something for everybody. So don't be afraid to have fun, play around, try something new. You can literally do any style of lashing in a half set. So as you can see here, we've got kind of like a wet, wispy look. This one is a little bit more volume, and then you can see this transition where I go from volume fans to closed fans in the inner corner to kind of match those natural lashes a little bit better. And this is the last slide where you saw the retention. That's this client. So, and then this one is a super natural. She wanted it to look like her natural lashes basically on a day-to-day basis. She didn't want to put mascara on. She wanted something that looked hyper realistic. This is my fiance. I made him do this. He got an anime with a wing. So like there's lots of different variations and fun stuff you can do. This is more of a strip lash style. And then this one, it doesn't look that long, but this is like the longest in this one is like a 14 millimeters. So a little bit harder to transition. I had to go a little bit further into the inner corner than I usually do. But yeah, like anything that's wispy, you can make it into a half set. So a big question I get is, okay, so if it's a half set, is it half the amount of time that a full set takes you? So how long should a half set take me? I made this chart to help you determine how long you should be scheduling your half sets for. This is a guideline. I can't, tell each and every one of you how long it's going to take you to do a half set. Everybody's different. So this is just a guideline. So if it's your first attempt, maybe book longer than this till you get the hang of it and get comfortable doing it more. So if you generally take 2 hours for a full set, generally 1 hour for a fill, you should be booking anywhere from like an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half for your half set. And then if you take 3 hours for a full set, 1.5 hours for a fill, you might need an hour 45 for a half set. And then 4 hours for full set, 2 hours for a fill, you might need 2.5 hours for a half set. So you can kind of go off of this. Like I said, if it's your first time attempting it, like book yourself like 2 hours and give it a go, take your time. And then as you get the hang of it and you're able to like distinguish which lashes are anagen, catagen, telogen, you're going to get faster. It's going to become easier and easier. I've been doing half sets since 2020. And, when I was back in 2020, I would book like an hour and a half for every half set. Now I finish almost every half set in an hour. So, it's like anything. With time, you get better. You get better at it. Yeah. The next thing is, how much should you be charging for a half set? Should you just take your full set price and divide it in half? So half sets should be one of your most profitable services. It's designed as an express service that is transforming your clients from absolutely nothing to a polished look. And your pricing should land somewhere in between your full set and your fill price. So the best way to determine that price is by using this calculation. So you take your fill price, divide it by 100, times it by 30, and then you get $30. So then you take that $30 and add it to your fill price. So 130. This is not a surefire way to know how much to charge. It just kind of gives you a basis. That should be that should be the least you charge is $130 if your fill price is $100. Here is like a better example. So I took a bunch of different full set prices and fills, and this is the number you get with those calculations. Now, some of these numbers are kind of weird. You're not going to charge someone $84.50. You're probably going to round that up to a number that makes sense. Maybe you charge 90, or for the 160 full set and $80 fill price, 104, you might be charging 110. I would say to just find that base number and then make it make sense for you and your clients. The thing with the half set is it needs to make sense for the client to want to book the half set over the fill or the full set price. If you're charging $145 for your full set, and then your half set price is $130, people are probably not going to be booking the half set that often. Whereas if your full set price is $145 and let's say your half set price is like $100, that makes sense for the client. And the nice part is I base it off of a lot of my stuff off of my time. So for me, having an hour fill, I usually charge $95 for an hour fill, depending what I'm doing. It can kind of range, but I would rather have a half set booked for that hour because I'm going to be making significantly more in that hour than I would be if I had just a regular fill in. Does that make sense to everybody? Like I said, this is an example that you can kind of just use to go off of. Maybe I'll go back so people want to take a look at that calculation again. So yeah, you take whatever number you get, add that to your fill price, and that's your basis to go off of.
And what are you charging for half set fills? Similar to your regular ones, or?
I do half set fills so half set takes me an hour. A 2.5 week fill for a half set generally takes me 30 minutes. And a bigger fill for a half set, like let's say 3 or 4 weeks, is around 45 minutes. So I charge like $55 for a 30-minute fill. And then for like a 45-minute fill, I'm going to be charging closer to like $80. So then they're just coming. The nice thing with the half set is the initial doesn't take that long. And then they book in for my shortest fill times. It never takes me longer than 45 minutes, like literally ever, to do a half set fill. Usually it's closer to 30 minutes. And for clients, 30 minutes is like perfect. I find when I'm doing lashes, at the hour mark, people get squirmy. You can the hour hits and they're like readjusting and they're moving. You can tell they're not comfortable. They don't really want to be here anymore. They want to just be done. So it's perfect for those people who just want to come for like a quick, they don't want to be at my house for an hour and a half every single time. They want to come for the hour and then do their maintenance, 30 minutes, quick in and out, leaving with like the look that they're after. Do you have any more questions?
Hi, I missed it a little bit. Can you please just tell me what's the difference between a full set and a half set?
Yes, I'll just go all the way back to the beginning because that was my last slide anyway. I'll just go over this one and this one again. So a half set is you're literally just doing half or 40 to 60% of the natural lashes extended. So we're not putting an extension on every single hair on the person's eye. We're focusing majority of the extensions to the outer corner, and then we're transitioning to the inner corner to just bare natural lashes. So that's a photo example where you can see extensions, and then in the middle you can't really tell, and then nothing on the inner corner. And there's another example. So natural lashes, transitioning. So there's a mix of extensions and natural, and then most of the coverage is focused to the outer corner. And for anybody who joined halfway through or closer to the end. I do believe that this is being recorded, and I think they're going to post it on Sugar Lash. I'm unsure of that. Don't
Yeah.
quote me.
There will be a recording posted on YouTube, but the link will be on our website.
Yeah, so you can go back and rewatch if you didn't get to see the first half of the presentation, and then, you know, take notes or whatever. That is everything. Thank you guys all so much for participating. We are doing these free webinars, I believe, once a month. So each month will be a different topic. So pay attention to Sugar Lash's website, because there's going to be lots more of these coming out. And I mean, who doesn't love free education? If anybody has any final questions, I would say them now. If you think of something at a later date where you're, you know, not sure, you can message me on Instagram. Again, my Instagram's Lash Oasis. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today.